But in a situation where you find that a person look at the situation,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. You're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. Now, let's have a look at the front pages of our papers this morning. And, of course, we'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story talks about 7 days to Buhari's ultimatum. Ministry yet to seal NPA's pilotage contract. The story has the riders that says revenue loss hits 102 billion naira. Pre-qualified bidders write president seek conclusion of process. No communication from Amechi BPP sources. And then, of course, you would see other stories. The pictorial shows you the protest, yesterday by Nigerian workers, that's the NLC, and also NANS at the same time. Now, members of the Nigerian Labour Congress during a rally for local government, legislature and judicial autonomy yesterday, and also members of National Association of Nigerian Students during a protest against the ASU strike at the Ministry of Education in Abuja yesterday. So we have protests, by two different unions taking place simultaneously. Well, the conversation about local government and legislature and judicial autonomy, I believe that has to do with the current constitution amendment. Like one of the stories is saying, somewhere at the top there, all eyes on National Assembly as lawmakers vote on constitution amendment today. So quite a number of issues there, and also. The next story, COVID-19 killed over 3,000 Nigerians in 2 years, and that's according to the NCDC. You have also Russia-Ukraine war. FG begins evacuation of stranded Nigerians tomorrow. And then at the bottom there, you see cocaine deal. Again, court rejects carries bail application. Bauchi Governor Okesh Nufu Wabi as new emir of Jamari. And then you have Zenith Bank records 244.5 billion naira profit. These are the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch also leads with a story about Ukraine-Russia war. Federal government to airlift 2,000 Nigerians. Evacuation begins Wednesday. And the riders, Buhari approves funding as federal government tips air peace, Max Air. 4 or 5 aeroplanes to evacuate Nigerian refugees. And this is according to the federal government. And right at the top on page 19, NNPC confirms IOC's exit, insists on gas development. And you see the story about fuel scarcity. Nieti blames subsidy. Ex-depot price hits 180 naira per litre. And the details of that story will be found on page 19. Minister walks out on students protesting ASU strike. You find the details of that story on page 27. Just yesterday, we saw the National Association of Nigerian Students protest, the strike. On page 20, Nigeria's 993.38 billion imports from Russia at risk over war. And then there's a pictorial there on the Punch that shows you fill queues, at a filling station on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. These are some of the major stories on the Punch.
All right. Now, on the Guardian, Nation newspaper, on the Nation newspaper this morning, we have some, interesting stories as well. Let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. Now, the lead story there says, worsening petrol scarcity cripples cities, businesses. And then it has the riders that says, Lagos, Abuja, Ibadan, Osogbo, worst hit, TUC malls industrial action. And then you see also other stories above the nameplate there. INEC okays 18 parties for 2023 elections. Agency, no more registration. You see also, well, that's a sharp decrease, really. 18 for 2023 election. If you compare that to what we had in 2019,
There's quite a difference.
that's a huge drop, in the number, and I think that is for good. That's arguable though. Now, Russia-Ukraine war. Evacuation of Nigerians begin tomorrow, and that's the next story there. You'll find details on page 30. Zenith Bank makes 765.6 billion naira fully year gross earnings, and then you have governors, minister reject proposed power bill, and then the next story there talks about row in APC over convention panel, what IOCs must do before divesting from Nigeria by NNPC. You'd also see other stories there. Well, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take one more before we take a look at the major stories on the dailies this morning. On the Guardian newspaper, hurdles as Nigerian companies take over IOC's onshore assets. And the riders there, $105 billion oil, gas decommissioning in Nigeria. Others create concerns. Shell, ExxonMobil, any others to sell over $27 billion assets. And you also see worries over weak infrastructure, legal battles amid energy transition. And right at the top on page 5, you see the story about Fort Ekiti monarch escapes kidnapping, death by whisker. And on page 3 on The Guardian this morning, Zenith Bank posts 280.4 billion naira profit, records growth across key indicators. Cool's poverty must be dealt with for Africa to grow, says Oshibajo. And then you see a pictorial there that shows you Senior Advisor, Global Affairs to His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman and other dignitaries there. And on page 2, evacuation of Nigerians in Ukraine begins tomorrow. These are some of the major stories on The Guardian.
All right, now let's get perspectives on these stories. We are going to be joining Sunday Michael, the Deputy Business Editor, Daily Trust, joining us virtually to give us perspectives on some of these stories this morning. Good to have you join us this morning, Sunday.
It's a pleasure. Good morning. Good morning, Zainab.
Apparently, one thing that seemed to reappear on the papers this morning is about fuel scarcity in the country. We thought that by now we should have been done with this. I mean, we should have been over with this because, there were a lot of promises by the NNPC, for instance, that says all depots and retailers will be operating 24 hours, to ensure that this come to an end. But it doesn't look like the queues are disappearing.
Well, absolutely. I am a big victim, for unable to show up. We have come to a point now where it appears that everything that is not coming to fruition after all. They told us that the queues will disappear last. We were also told like your elections will work for 24 hours. They have inundated the airspace with millions of liters of petrol, but that's this petrol is where we can buy them. So give an imagination whether we can take this seriously when it comes to public statements around the problem we face as a country.
Is the problem really? Why is it lingering for this long? Is it that the fuel product is not available, or is it the distribution that is the problem?
Well, we are not sure at this point. At first, they were confident of about 100 liters, but this was about two. By now you should run all of those from circulation more. And then at some point, we had all the distribution taking time to go around. And today we are the war in Ukraine, the potential uh, for this disruption. So at this point, except the government was what is an accurate information to believe anymore.
So yesterday, the National Association of Nigerian Students protested, at the Unity Fountain. And to my surprise, I'm seeing here on the Punch newspaper that the Minister, of Education actually walked out of them.
Well, papers always have ways of capturing stories and all of that. That may not exactly be the case, but maybe just a caption to give it that kind of vibe. He probably have addressed them, and he's probably done with whatever he wants to say and decided to go. And so you put it that way. I was not there though, but I'm not sure what exactly happened. But I think maybe that's giving it a very exaggerating caption, there. Even, I mean, he could have just walk out, yes, but maybe not walk out.
Oh, walk out.
The way it is being captured, by our papers, so it's normal.
But do you think,
I mean, the whole strike thing is something that a lot of people have always talked about. Nigerians have complained about for decades, for years. Why do ASU have to go on the strikes? I mean, why do we have this reoccurring? Government meeting with ASU, and then there'll be resolutions, there'll be agreements reached, and then at the end of the day, government will falter, and then ASU will now have to go back to strike. I mean, the other day, I was looking at certain data, and it is showing that for every 5 years, ASU would have gone for strike for a complete year, and that between 1999 till date, ASU has gone on strike for at least 15 times. And it happens literally almost every year. There will be one strike or the other. And each time it happens, it will take at least 3 months, 5 months. And these things are not helping. It's not helping our educational sector.
At all.
If you look at, the number of Nigerians that we are now talking about stranded in Ukraine today, many of them had to travel abroad for education because, of the epileptic nature of our, learning in our universities, from decades ago, and so it's not helping anyone. And definitely that will also have implication on those who are studying here in Nigeria, as students, because you have breaks in between your learning process.
Quite long breaks,
yes,
actually.
And sometimes what happens is, in order to catch up, when the strikes are over, what schools do
is a lot of bombardment.
Once you get back, you'll be faced with the examination.
So
maybe you have just 1 week or 2 weeks interval, and then boom, an examination is thrown at you.
When you've been at home for that long,
you've been home for long.
I'm also curious, about whether this protest is going to change anything, whether it's going to prompt, the government and ASU, to come to terms and just let it die.
I have always said personally that demonstrations or protests in Nigeria, they seem to have lost their value, because for most times you really struggle to know which one is genuine and which one is not. Sometimes it seems like people who are protesting are being induced. Sometimes it seems like they are, being used, politically, and the likes. Not to say that there are no genuine protests, by whoever, but the thing is that it's been taken over, it's been hijacked by certain interests, and these days it's very difficult to tell. And so even when you see people protesting, you are not sure whether this will yield any results. The last protest that was held in Nigeria that was widely, agreed by many to be one of the most organic protests that we have seen was the hashtag #EndSARS protest. Even at that too was hijacked at some point, but I believe that that's a representation of what a lot of Nigerians desire. So protests, yes, they could yield results, but beyond just the protest, we want to see action. We want to see government take responsibility. We want to see ASU take responsibility on their part, as well. It's not just always about strike actions, but these agreements, these discussions, are we seeing the results? Are you giving the government the time to respond and to take the necessary steps to address some of the agitations and some of the concerns? That's also very important because, if we continue like this, I don't know, maybe we'll just wake up one day and discover that people are not even, taking education seriously anymore, especially at the tertiary level.
Well, we'll be on the lookout, to see, how this whole situation pans out. But there's this other story. It sounds really disturbing, though. On page 4 and page 5 on the Punch, the story about dementia patients disappears from Lagos Psychiatric Hospital. And the son, I think I saw that story on social media. The son was quite, really, really very angry, and he slams, the facility and all of that. I really don't know. Does this mean that our psychiatric hospitals are not properly maimed, to put up with patients, or what really is the problem?
Well, it's just a reflection of what the system is generally in Nigeria in terms of public institutions, public health facilities, public educational institutions, and the likes. You find this general attitude of negligence in a lot of government facilities and public institutions, and that's because of the people that manage those institutions. Sometimes government on its part, at the highest level, make all the necessary efforts to get things working, but someone has to be the one to manage those facilities. So it is in our general attitude in Nigerians. I don't know the details of the story, but I think that if something like that happens, we will ask the question of how did it even happen? Someone was supposed to be on the lookout, isn't it? So it seems to me that when you have a relative or you have someone in a psychiatric hospital, probably you have to also sit there and keep an eye on the person yourself.
It shouldn't be that way. When we keep patients, in such institutions, we know we are at peace. We're supposed to be at peace, rather, and think that, okay, there's a safe haven for them to actually be at. And then when we hear stories like this, I don't know how it makes people feel.
Exactly. Or maybe we should, well, I don't know, but I think that a lot has to do with the managerial aspect of this. And those responsible should be able to give account of what's happening and how it happened. And then what are the security arrangements that we have around those places, around the hospitals, that we have, so that such things don't happen. We hope that the person is being identified and recovered. Well, a lot of other stories. We are also seeing stories about INEC, saying that they have okayed 18 political parties for 2023 elections. If you recall, I think at a point we had about more than 70 political parties registered in the last elections, and we had the registering and the listing of some political parties by INEC based on the provisions of the Electoral Act, where political parties are not able to secure a certain number of votes and certain constituencies, they are, being deregistered. So that has been, I think that's, the number has been trimmed down to about 18 political parties. Sometimes you see all these political parties and you see the ballot papers when we print them, you see it very long, and it costs Nigeria quite a lot to print some of those print some of those ballot papers. At the end of the day, when you go to the polls, some of those political parties do not have even voters. They do not have even candidates.
Some of these, 18, it says 18 political parties. Right now, I think the only number of parties that I know might be just 5 political parties that are actually popular. Okay. The rest of them, a lot of people don't actually know about them. But we'll see, as the coming elections.
Which is why some people are advocating, about Nigeria having a 2-party system where you do not have this multiplicity of parties. But again, those who kick against it argue that it's a democratic system and you need to open the space, to be able to accommodate more people. And it's only by having political parties that you can do that. But again, we have always talked about political parties having ideologies. It's not just having a group of people come together, and then decide that, okay, we want to run this political party, but there have to be ideologies. There have to be, very, very strategic ways, of gaining supporters, and followership and all of that. The hard work that needs to be done, across the length and breadth of the country is very, very important to be rooted. And I know, yes, a lot of people have also said that requires a lot of money to do. But again, if you want to run a political party, you should have calculated the cost. It's not cheap, isn't it?
Politics in Africa is not cheap.
Yeah. So, well, we'll take a short breather, and then when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that